Good morning, everyone. My name is Kayvon. It's very nice to see you this morning. It's an honor to be part of Impact for Breakfast. It's a honor because of a couple of things. One is because we're trying to create a space where possibilities for impact come together with the resources needed to generate that impact. And it's an amazing opportunity to be in the middle of that and to support the networks around the world. We are now 50 plus chapters around the world. We have been, excuse me one second. Um, we started as an idea in its infancy about 18 years ago by Audrey, and it has grown since then. We're 50 plus chapters around the world, 5,000 plus members, and it's really people mission aligned individuals coming together to do the good work that we can all do. So it's an informal network, and as I mentioned, decentralized. There's no pitching. We're just getting around the table, trying to put together some ideas and bring them to realization. So this morning we have the Education Development Center. Amy, Satya, Tanya, and Melanie are here, and they will be speaking to you about their great work. So I'm going to stop there and allow them to take over and really just start the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayvon, and thank you to the IFB for hosting this conversation, Future Proofing a Youth Workforce at Scale. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you, wherever you are in the world. We're really excited to be here today with all of you. My name is Amy. I'm a Principal International Technical Advisor with EDC, and I will be co-facilitating with Kayvon today. Just a bit about me. I have about 25 years of experience working across the humanitarian and development continuum on youth, livelihoods, development, and education and emergencies programming. So, to jump right in to what we anticipate to be a really exciting conversation, first, I'll provide a very, very brief overview of EDC, just for those of you that are unfamiliar with our work. Then I will introduce my wonderful colleagues who are going to frame the discussion today with learning from EDC's work from the Philippines. And we chose this particular program example because it's a great example of what we learned working at scale and how we were able to be agile in the face of emerging needs to innovate with with system actors and respond to those needs. We'll sprinkle in a few other country and program examples as we go from our work across Asia, in Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America and Caribbean, as they relate to our discussion and as we go. So, a quick snapshot of EDC. We're an international development organization. We're both a learning and implementing organization founded in 1958 out of MIT with headquarters in Massachusetts, but you can find our staff kind of everywhere across the globe. We have a mission to partner with others worldwide to advance every person's journey to learn, work, and be well. And we've operated in more than 80 countries around the world and have been active in all 50 states in the United States, working at funding levels of 100,000 in some cases to grants and contracts of more than $100 million. We've worked with corporate funding and foundations, so MasterCard Foundation, Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase Foundations, as well as with Hewlett Packard, Cisco, Google, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, and more. We work also alongside bilateral and multilateral institutions, and we've been an implementing partner of UN agencies and various donor governments. Our work's always done with the inclusion of national actors, state and local governments, academia, civil society, and media, and in partnership with NGOs and community-based, often youth-serving organizations. In many of the countries where we've worked, we've supported national and local actors to strengthen their operational, technical, and financial expertise. Um, in the last 25 years, we've served more than 6.4 million youth and supported the development of 50,000 youth-owned micro and small businesses. 70% of which were still active 2 years after startup. And we've engaged more than 10,000 private sector actors of different sizes. In 2022, we launched Our World, Our Work. This is a 10-year global initiative to reach 1 million young people, 60% of whom are women, in decent green and blue economic opportunities. And here with me today is Melanie Sani. She's the director of EDC's International Youth and Workforce Development Team, and she leads the Our World, Our Work initiative. She has over 25 years of experience designing, analyzing, and scaling livelihoods and workforce development programs and mobilizing multi-sector partnerships for measurable outcomes. Tanya Selnick is an international technical advisor. She is focused on digital and green markets and experienced in both macro and local labor market analyses and private sector engagement. She was the project director for the Philippines program that we will be discussing today. And Satya Lankaban is EDC's regional representative in Asia Pacific. She leads several education and youth workforce programs, including High Touch, High Tech for All, Virtual First Jobs, and Green Skills Vietnam. She has over 20 years of experience in STEM education, curriculum innovation, green entrepreneurship, and public-private partnerships. So please enjoy the brief presentation, and we look forward to any questions you may have for us after the presentation and to the rich discussion to follow. So over to you, Tanya, to set the scene.
Thanks, Amy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we see as this moment in the world of work, and then a little bit about the Philippines, just to set the stage for the conversation that's coming up. I think we all intuitively feel that today's labor market is shifting really fast. Generative AI in particular, automation, climate change are all factors, as well as I think acutely right now, this push-pull of globalization. What this is doing is really changing the nature of many existing jobs, even as new ones are created. Green and blue economies in particular are a major source of growth or potential growth, and they demand both specialized technical skills and cross-cutting soft skills. So creativity, adaptability, and problem solving. Some of these are, perennial skills that are on the list of top 10 most needed skills for the World Economic Forum, but there's something I think acute about how we are meeting the moment now that seems to require more of them, right? You need people to work in teams together. You need cross-functional teams. And so this is pushing the envelope in terms of what we expect of new workforce entrants. So there's 1.8 billion people preparing to enter this transforming world of work, meeting their needs for marketable skills, for work experience, and also incubating within them the drive to continuously learn is essential not only for their futures, but also for resilient and stable economies worldwide. To meet the moment, education and training systems need to keep pace with these changes, but many national and local systems really struggle to do so. And this is due to a number of things. The few that we're going to talk about today are mismatches between public and private sector priorities, but also crucially their timelines. So private sector moves fast, public sector is notoriously slow. Limited data that's available to education providers on labor markets. So how do they know who they're skilling for? And slow or low uptake of the fourth industrial and green skilling programs. At present, we risk oversupplying traditional skills to a global economy that's demanding a pivot. And this threatens to leave many people, and youth and young women in particular, locked out of emerging opportunities. In order for education and training systems to respond to this, they need meaningful, authentic private sector engagement and digital and climate responsive training that includes hands-on work opportunities. We've also found that it's critical to incorporate entrepreneurship training and mentoring so that youth bring an entrepreneurial mindset and spirit to existing jobs and to new businesses. Indeed, there's a real urgency to reach higher numbers of youth so we can drive innovation in startups in the green economy and technology and in other sectors to mitigate the disruptions and the inequities that are being caused by climate change and emerging technologies. So today we're going to spotlight an example from the Philippines. We'll share the lessons that we found to work A lot of this is through co-creation of cost-effective, locally owned interventions that have been woven into the national system. First, though, I'm going to give you some overall context about the Philippines and our work there. So the Philippines is located in the tropical cyclone belt. It's the fourth most vulnerable country to climate risks worldwide. So this includes extreme weather, rising sea levels, and declining marine resources, including the fish and ocean products that are caught for food. The Philippines also has an array of laws and policies on climate change, including a Green Jobs Act, but it's falling behind on its climate adaptation and greenhouse gas reduction goals. The public and private sector, they are investing in new technologies for climate adaptation. The number of green jobs is growing, particularly in renewable energy, climate smart agriculture, and sustainable fisheries. But to meet this demand, the Philippines will need an additional 3.9 million workers with green skills in the next 5 years alone. So against this backdrop, in 2018, 1 in 5 Filipino youth, so we're defining them as ages 15 to 24, had completely fallen out of the system, meaning they were out of school, they were out of training, and they were out of work. For those youth, many of whom actually wanted to re-engage with learning or find a livelihood, there was no way forward. There was no one to go to. Basically, there was no coherent second chance framework in place to reach them or that they could reach out to. Furthermore, there was no systemic support for education and training providers in keeping up with the skills demand for local climate and technology jobs. The government of the Philippines recognized this, and really critically, the potential role that out-of-school youth could play in addressing these challenges and in transforming the country's economy. So it was into this context that EDC, which at that point had been working in the Philippines for 15 years, began its work on the Opportunity 2.0 program. Opportunity 2.0 was launched in 2020 to support this and strengthen the existing education and training system and provide second chance opportunities to out-of-school youth. We worked through systems actors to co-design and test possible solutions, ensuring these aligned with government policies and priorities, and then to scale what worked to create more equitable pathways into education, employment, and entrepreneurship for large numbers of youth. Opportunity 2.0 was structured around 3 objectives. First, to bolster second chance education for out-of-school youth by strengthening the alternative learning system. Second, to expand work readiness and demand-driven technical vocational training by strengthening the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority. And third, enhancing the enabling environment for youth's transition to the workforce through private sector engagement and the creation of youth development alliances that would coordinate and anchor youth-centered policies, programs, and resources. So just noting that this program began in the midst of COVID, when the Philippines was under a state of emergency and in lockdown, what did we achieve? Well, over 2 million out-of-school youth accessed Opportunity 2.0, out of which an estimated 70% transitioned to further education employment or improved their livelihoods, and at least 1/3 of those who transitioned into employment did so in decent blue or green jobs. We also founded 15 Youth Development Alliances, or YDAs, and these mobilized over 69,000 volunteers while strengthening city-based coordination mechanisms. These YDAs integrated green and blue priorities, including citywide greening initiatives, green technical training, amongst other things, into their community, their annual community action plans. So Melanie, I'm going to turn it over to you now to tell us a little bit more.
Thank you, Tanya. My role today is try to explain the how and distillate some of the key lessons that we thought could be of interest for your own programs and own thinking in working at scale around youth employment and entrepreneurship in particular. So first and foremost, we were trying to think about de-risking and what it meant to really achieve those large numbers. And for us, it's all about partnerships. From the beginning and the outset of the program, we really identified a wide range of actors, both national agencies, but as well local private sector partners and private training providers that had the authority, the technical expertise, and the local legitimacy that will ensure that that approach and programs will be sustainable and locally owned and scalable all at once. So we partnered with national organizations Department of Education, of course, and especially the accelerated learning system that exists in the Philippines that give a second chance to use to reintegrate the program and needed really strengthening and coordination with private partners. Technical and vocational education system, but very important was the Department of Trade and Industry that connects us with the private sector. And when we speak about private sector, it's not only the large companies or even the medium companies, it's the hundreds of thousands of micro and small businesses that really make the economy of the Philippines. And how did we connect them? How could we connect them at a national scale to ensure that there was really a streamlined process between identification of the demand from the employer side and training institutions to match that demand. So that gave us a real national foundation for work readiness, work experience, and green skilling that we were looking at for this program. Let me dive a little bit more on the private sector, which was so crucial. We worked with Accenture development partners around national labor market assessments to understand particularly the emerging economic sectors, where are the jobs, not only, in 10 years from now, but immediately within 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years of programming and understanding as well that those markets are extremely dynamic. That national level labor market assessment was a foundation for hyperlocal market assessments, and 15 different cities were also building their capacity from that initial information to conduct hyperlocal market assessment in the green economy and understanding as well the more what I would say I would not call it the brown economy, but almost the traditional economy that needs as well to adapt processes and the green business acumen to be able to adapt and mitigate the effect of climate change. So very concretely, that led to immediate opportunities identified for work-based learning and entrepreneurship and startups. And we connected with over 2,000 employers and the chambers of commerce through local youth development alliances, so across 15 different locations in the country to really have this streamlined exchange of information between the demand and the supply side. Moreover, we worked with over 400 micro and small enterprises around understanding where they are in terms of adopting green processes and green practices and how through the supply of the youth workforce, they could also start adapting more easily those kind of green business acumen and approaches that will allow them to both recruit highly competent new talents into their micro and small businesses as well as medium enterprises to grow and at the same time adopt some of those models of sustainable business practices. Financial inclusion was extremely important. What it meant in terms of supporting not only startup, but also growth of micro and small businesses and understanding where are some of those obstacles. Through those youth development alliances, we really brought together not only the Central Bank of the Philippines, but also the emerging fintechs and other finance service providers to really understand locally and hyper-locally what were some of the obstacles of the solution that could be brought forward by those financing institutions in support of those vibrant, new and growing green small and business enterprise sector. Nothing will have happened without those youth development alliances. The idea was, so there was a lack of connections between private sector training providers, the youth themselves, and the national and local agencies working particularly on environment and climate mitigation and adaptation. But really the heart of what could be sustained was at the subnational level through those locally owned mayor offices or local government units owned youth development alliances that really facilitated that day-to-day connection and ongoing analysis of the demand and the supply and facilitating and troubleshooting that streamlined processes of really engaging the new workforce within the hundreds at a time businesses that were in demand of that workforce. So that's some of the elements in terms of really looking at that broad mapping of partnerships that really ensure the success of such program at scale, but highly locally owned and sustainable. The other element we thought could be interesting to share with you today is about cost effectiveness and design and what it means to work at scale. For us, it was extremely important. Costing has always been at the center of our design, during implementation, and after, in really understanding where are the cost effectiveness, where are the economies of scale that can be done, and how do we keep really building those public-private partnerships locally for sustainability. So a few elements here. From the start, really working with those different system actors to really go to nail down the cost units and have simple ways to really arrive to some budgeting scenarios that we will know that exact cost per use and investing here will lead to that many young people that will be able to access such and such opportunities. Really unique cost model that will look at trainers' days, curriculum, absorptions of those costs by local and national agencies. That was one. Second, it was to build on what was existing. We don't direct deliver ourselves as an international organization. We really reinforce the local and national training delivery systems and really working through previous investment, be able to top up some of those existing delivery systems so that we can really maximize cost efficiency in the delivery of those programs across the entire country. Third, adaptive management. As Tanya mentioned, we started under COVID. It was in some ways, after a very quick pivoting, what allowed us to really reach scale quickly and understand better immediately the value added of blended learning approaches and online things that we are now very used to 5 years later, but at that time we were not. And what it meant in a country like the Philippines. We were able to pivot quickly the cost and take that opportunity to sustain those kind of blended learning and online approaches that allowed us to reach more teachers, more trainers, and really feed in that digital support in terms of mentoring of the trainers and the teachers for quality at scale that we originally didn't budget for, nor had in the design, but it allowed us to quickly reach economies of scales, actually. So a few lessons learned as well. Local ownership will definitely drive cost sharing. So out of those 15 YDS, 14 are now fully sustainable, are part of the mayor office budget lines and institutionalized into the ongoing budgets of the city at the city level. Data-driven planning lowers unit cost. That ongoing market assessment that I was talking about is now conducted every year by those local youth development alliances, and that really allows a very streamlined process, ensuring there is no empty seats in training course, no underutilized budget, and really true public-private partnership that really meet the demand of the local economy. And finally, to really sustain cost effectively those national type of programs, moving back from the hyperlocal or sub-regional to the national, we also learned that it was extremely important to cost and to help actually the national government agencies cost what is the cost of bringing all of these to national scale so that it can inform public partnership and private partnerships about the cost efficiency and actually the fact that those type of models that are not locally owned are not like a big Mercedes that potentially the national budget will not afford, but sometimes by just reallocation of some of those public financing and top up private investment, those kind of national reach and cost per use are actually very accessible by the country we operate in. So some food for thoughts that we wanted to share on the whole. But now I will turn to Satya to conclude this presentation. Satya.
Thank you, Melanie. We have discussed effectiveness and achieving impact at scale, but I want to bring us to a different part of the conversation, what actually makes system-level intervention sustainable. And perhaps just as important, how do we keep innovating within system when new challenges and needs keep emerging? At EDC, our approach is guided by a few principles that help keep our work relevant and adaptable. And I think you have heard a few of this throughout our discussion. First, we see our role as facilitators, not direct implementers. This means we step in to listen to what's working and what is not, and then support coordination among partners and strengthen existing systems to deliver results. Second, it is also about mobilizing local champions and influencers, centering youth in decision-making and co-designing practical tools with a diverse set of stakeholders and partners. This way, everything we developed is grounded, relevant, and usable. And third, we create space for continuous reflection and adjustment. We are living in a fast-changing world, so we design processes that allow teams and systems to reflect, adapt, and improve along the way. These principles help ensure that the tools, the systems, and the outcomes are owned by the local actors, not driven by EDC and not by external actors. To summarize how our work was sustainable in the Philippines, we laid the following foundations. First, we aligned with existing national level priorities and commitments to the 2030 SDG agenda. Second, we adopted a holistic vertical and horizontal system approach. Third, by embedding structured feedback loops and ongoing reflection into implementation, our team and partners identify new gaps and opportunities. And what come out of that process? New innovations that help address real pain points, increase effectiveness, boost efficiency, or expand reach, especially to youth in underserved or rural areas, using diverse learning modalities. Let me share just a few examples of tools that are ready to deploy, easily adapted, and scalable. First is an outline of blended learning future-proof skills development curriculum for higher education students and graduates. It focuses on future of work competencies like analytical and creative thinking, AI and technology fluency, green and blue skills, resilience, leadership, and more. This curriculum uses work-integrated learning and design thinking to prepare students and have them apply new skills in real-world work-based learning or project-based learning. This customizable intervention has been implemented in Vietnam and Liberia with higher education students and is offering a practical, localized solution for millions of youth. Second, our empowerment through data-driven green entrepreneurship or EDGE model. This equips rural youth with tools like GIS mapping and generative AI to optimize local agricultural value chains. Through hands-on community-rooted learning, the youth map value chain gaps, analyze data, and co-develop solutions with farmers and local actors. We have piloted EDGE in Indonesia, the Philippines, and Thailand. EDGE blends digital skills, green entrepreneurship, and sustainability practices, positioning youth as positive agent of green growth. It holds strong potential for replication in underserved agricultural communities across Southeast Asia. And third, an interactive map called Market Able. This tool addresses a core challenge faced by any entrepreneurship training program. Once the youth leave the classroom, they need coaching to figure out their next steps and market entry points. Market Able uses story-based, localized content to guide them through business planning, market discovery, and financial decisions, all rooted in real jobs and business opportunities that are representative of the country's local economy that all emerging entrepreneurs can really relate to. So all of these innovations, like all of EDC work, are about helping youth, educators, and system actors adapt to change, solve problems locally, and build lasting solutions. We have learned how to innovate within systems, not outside them, so that when needs evolve, the solution can also evolve too. And those three tools are just three examples of what it looks like to give youth the right tools to address digital inequity and navigate the disruption that are already reshaping their futures. Back to you, Amy.
Thank you so much, Satya, Melanie, and Tanya. And thanks to all of you for listening. Kayvon and Audrey told us we would have a diverse and engaging group of attendees with a wide range of interests. So we're really eager to take any questions from all of you on the presentation or flow into a broader discussion.
You can place your questions in the chat or raise a hand and be selected. I'm going to jump in as people may ponder their own questions. As I was listening, I was thinking about from a mission investor's perspective, what's really important to understand is cost. And I'd like to ask how do we come up with the cost per participant figures in these programs? Because what mission investors and foundations are often looking at and weighing are, the unit costs for programs, how well integrated they are with public programming in the context of the PPPs, et cetera. Could you speak a little bit to how you assess that and understand that in the different country contexts?
Yeah, thank you, Audrey. I'm going to pass that to Melanie.
Yes. And I will try to phrase my answer within that system approach as well. So understanding that a lot of the core population we work with are young people, you have a diverse situation here. You have the out-of-school youth population and who actually reach or where do they go to understand who is a system delivery mechanisms, the training providers, compared to formal education system, young people who are already within the system. And based on that, the structure of the cost will differ between teachers, what is already covered or not by the either public or private formal education systems, and comparing that with costing what the extra cost of the innovation, either through curriculum, delivery materials, printing or no printing cost, as well as the accompaniment, well, in my English, sorry, the accompaniment element. Often in those programs, it's not so much about covering the cost of the trainer. It's really understanding how the structure of work-based learning, business startup, and coaching and mentoring can happen in a cost-effective way. So we will look at different models and cost those models school-based, peer coaching type of model that can help lower the cost, as well as a different element of cascade modeling and quality assessment around. So to give you a very short answer, between out-of-school use and school use, the cost will differ. And then as you reach scale and bring those new public-private locally owned partnerships that start bringing their own monies in some of those coordination and accompaniment effort, we can see after that the cost effectiveness of those programs. So I prepared some figures to give you a sense. We start usually at around $400, $300 per use on those type of programs. And when they arrive at that system level we have described with the Philippines, that we have seen in Rwanda, in Senegal, at that national scales, we are at about $20 per use per head because of that absorption and also the economies of scales between the national and local mechanism that we were just describing. Good enough, Audrey, in terms of details? There is much more analysis, of course, behind, but
yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thank
you. Thank you. I see.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Kate.
Hi, thank
Ryan,
you for a
please.
fascinating presentation. I'm really interested in how you are collecting data on impact. Are you evaluating on self-reflection or the competencies, and how are you measuring outcomes? Is it on jobs created? I think I'm also thinking further ahead into that. How is it reshaping the economy of the Philippines? So one of my disciplines is as a futurist, so I'm kind of interested in how you're creating the signals today with that work to completely revamp the economies of the Philippines. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, thank you, Elaine. I'll just open that to whichever one of my colleagues would like to start on that. Tanya.
I can take this one as well. So we have a range of tools and approach in our monitoring and evaluation systems, both qualitative and quantitative data and outcome gathering. We are looking at the level of the use individuals through some sampling methodologies around skill acquisitions. And so we have both self-assessment and observation tools that can be also administered by trainers and other actors in terms of those soft competencies, work readiness skills, and self-awareness and pension au succès. My feeling that I can succeed. So those elements, we have developed different metrics and assessments on that skills demonstration. But then we also have different survey tools around the transition to work, and really, again, sampling and through different data, not only, particularly we work with both informal and formal economies. So we would be looking at earnings in addition to the type of employment, better new employment at the youth level, as well as data surveys with employers that we deploy to understand the change of mindset and the increase of employment and quality employment as well. And then when we moved into that system level, we will work with it. And so within the national agencies, being it the education agencies, as well as ministries of labor and the trade and industry in support of micro and small economic growth I was describing a bit. We also have surveys and assessment tools to capture the national data based on the type of inputs that the program has been providing. So a national curriculum, teacher training cascade model, there are different elements to follow through that change of the supply side, the education system, and how much the innovation has been integrated. And on the work-related side, the connection to work and the entrepreneurship, we will work more directly with some of the statistics of transition to work that agencies are keeping and figuring out after that, sampling like 100,000 youth in the case of the Philippines to expand through the national data and different form of sampling to the 2 million we were referring to.
Could I add to that just about sort of feedback to local economies? So we work with our partners in like at the site level, the city, the village, wherever it is, to conduct local labor market assessments. And this is really, really critical to our approach. Part of what it does is build relationships locally between partners that normally don't talk to one another. The other thing that it does, and I think this is really critical, is it gives partners information on the local demand, right? Which in some cases diverges a lot from what the macro level expectations are. And we ask partners to do these annually. And what we start seeing 2-3 iterations into a project is that providers start shifting the programs that they offer. And this is when it gets really exciting, because this is when it proves the value, right? Because at first it's an assessment process and there's data, and that's great. But then they start to see, hey, we're not actually offering skills on target, and they start shifting, and that helps them increase their catchment, identify new students. I remember like a couple of years ago, and we were working in Rwanda, and we were like our 3rd year into labor market assessments. And one of our partners was like, hey, we're training welders and no one is hiring welders. Like, what else can we offer? And that's exactly what we start to look for in terms of how you sort of connect the dots back with local partners so that they are forward looking in terms of the skills that they're seeing and training for.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Do you also, because obviously families play such a huge role, especially if you're talking about entrepreneurship, as you're building entrepreneurial mindsets, there's the venture route or the employment route, etc. But families culturally have this great influence over this. And so I'm really fascinated as to what you've gathered around that also.
So we do a lot with communities, a lot with families, and actually when we work with youth with disabilities as well, we will talk a lot to caregivers and parents because they can often really limit the kinds of opportunities they think are appropriate for their children, right? And you have essentially a lot of gatekeeping in terms of what parents want to see their children do versus what the demand is for in the economy. We have a number of different approaches for how we do this. I think Satya can talk about one of the ones which we call a participatory community diagnostic. But I will say that this ends up being really critical. And one way that we in the Philippines worked to sort of get to this is we actually harnessed youth and youth ability to communicate, to create social media messaging and other products for other youth to inform them about what the labor market opportunities were. So this was a way that we could sort of help provide information that youth were really generating and really excited about, saying, here are the things that are coming up. Satya, do you want to fill in on some of the community work?
Thank you, Tanya. So in the Philippines, in a sister project to Opportunity 2.0, we work with ethnic minority youth. And in that work, we engage very deeply with that community. And we build a youth agency so that they feel that they can be the change agent for their own community. We also create opportunity for the youth to collect data about their own cultural practice, agricultural practice, and really get them capture and understand the existing issues and opportunities in their own community. So that also build a better connection between the youth and the communities, understanding about green jobs and sustainability, and also help inspire some of the youth to actually stay in the community rather than leaving and get a job elsewhere, and then try to build stronger economy and shift the agricultural practice to more sustainable practices.
Elaine, your question is so interesting. It made me think of when you brought up the families as well. In countries like Jamaica and Lebanon, working with diaspora, certainly we saw the attachment of diaspora to specific communities and to those governance structures within communities and how they were supporting labor market development, both to keep, again, young people from sort of a brain drain and going elsewhere, but also to kind of revitalize communities where they wanted to return to retire, for example. But I think that family, community, diaspora dynamic is so fascinating as well.
Yeah, for sure. And it's such an interesting, fast-moving space we're seeing this virtuous circle of, particularly for young people, a number of things. So fintech and sustainability tech marrying together into an equation so that there are these plug and play solutions for starting your own business, or they're the part of the skills that you need to bring in as green talent. And at the same time, those MSMEs, as service providers, but also then using it for sustainability, using it for regenerative solutions, is so innovative. So all of these, sustainability tech solutions and are being created by youth. They really see ahead into wetland conservation and many, many spaces. And it's my own sense is also that they, however, still are in that space of seeking permission from the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem. So when they, which is generally older than they are, and when they kind of get a non-response, it shakes them a bit. So again, they have this toolkit and they're very visionary, but they're also quite easily rot. So the self-efficacy bit that you pick up on is so fundamental. The resilience of it is really fundamental because so many people around them are kind of going are so far behind the curve. I find that fascinating also. So yeah, any thoughts on that? Also really interesting.
Yeah, I think that goes to the discussion of like the enabling environment that needs to be created so that they don't get rocked so much, or if they do, there's folks that are there to respond to that. Does anybody want to comment further from the EDC?
I can kick us off. So I think for out of school youth in particular, but I think for all youth, this is true. Like they get really easily rocked. Out of school youth also have this, are often stigmatized or they're perceived as idle or lazy. And it's really hard for them to figure out, how do I advance myself when they're getting all of this negative feedback? So one thing that I think is really amazing about the YDA process is that youth get out of school youth and all youth get perceived as leaders. And that is just truly transformative to move them into the space where they're leading community activities, they're leading volunteerism, they're leading all of these things. And we've had youth, a number of projects across the globe who tell us that this really changes who they are and what they think is possible. And once you get them into that space, they become really resilient. So like maybe the first job is, one that kind of stinks, but they see that as a starting point now, not where they're going to end up. And that is also just tremendously powerful. I could keep talking, but I'm gonna, I don't know, Satia or Melanie, if you have anything to add.
Or other questions from our audience too.
Well, pseudo audience, but I did want to ask the group here. There are various parallel streams of funding and financing for youth training and employment in many countries, whether it's supporting on the acceleration incubation side, whether it's public finance that's actually focused on preparing cash for the next 15 years of various kinds of support, social services, parts of the welfare state. Just curious whether anyone in this group is driving one or another kind of financing and funding in any particular place, and how we see these pieces fitting together, because EDC is a clear facilitator. Just curious if others in the group have experience with direct program funding or investment. Any comments? And I ask because our own family office is a funder of skills training and youth employment in India, and the communities that benefit from this type of investment are very, very specific. And the kinds of jobs that certain communities do, there tends to be, repeat patterns and, kind of family traditions and learning and techniques. People tend to stay within particular segments of work, and how we've funded that across the skills and training platform has had to be very nuanced. And it's a tough model to finance from an equity investment standpoint, but still nonetheless one that we feel is hugely rewarding in terms of outputs and outcomes. Just a very long-term play. So curious again if anyone has anything to add on this topic of funding and financing.
And Audrey, just to jump in on that, what in terms of that work in India and the impact you've been having on the other side, what have been some of the key limiting factors that you've faced in that work?
Well, only that there's a particular age band and an age group that we've been able to effectively work with. So it's really been just kind of low, kids from low income communities that get into some sort of college or, not always a university setting, but some sort of one of these technical colleges. And we haven't really been able to get beyond a certain age range. We haven't been able to get beyond a certain band of work. At best, in the Indian context, we've seen a couple of traditional communities, kids move into, kind of growing peri-urban economy, retail sector kind of jobs, and that's it. We also found that without getting involved in actual certification, like giving people like certificates and kind of some paper evidence of being trained, that unless you enter that, it's also quite difficult to give them, I don't know, to give them a sense of that concrete achievement. So it's possible that people run through the programs and then sort of fall out of the programs after a certain period of time. Yeah, I think we've had some limited success in the actual deployment of the content, to the point where the goal was then to move it all over to like an ed tech skills tech platform, like a tool, an app, to make it more cost effective.
This is a sort of segue, so forgive me, Audrey. You're used to me coming in left field, but
Great, Elaine.
it's more an observation really, and just to throw in there, which is, for example, when we email 16,000 students across the University of Geneva. So there's already a self-selection going on there, which is, they're already at university taking something, and invite them to participate in Global Entrepreneurship Week in the Best Ideas competition. Out of 16,000 students, and this bears itself out every single year, we get between 15 to 20 respondents, out of which, say there were 20, out of which 15 make it all the way through this very simple training mechanism to the actual pitch event. But of those 15 to 20, the ones that see it all the way through are exactly, they kind of come from nowhere, as it were. They have no startup training to begin with. And it's really about teaching them that process from problem to pitch. But it is fascinating for us because, again, I see this starting to happen more and more in these spaces. And I'm just wondering how obviously there'll be studies everywhere about it, but you can teach, build entrepreneurial competencies, but when it comes to how people stay in something or what they then go on to do, I'm just wondering, are we measuring the right thing? Often the pitch event is measured on, the innovation quality of the idea, versus actually we should be measuring their ability to pick themselves up after the first idea falls apart and apart and apart. And I'm just wondering how that goes to the funding mechanisms, and the way we evaluate. Should we be doing something entirely different? Because if the funders aren't responding or looking for something that doesn't exist or doesn't match what the reality is, especially of Gen Z, how do we deal with it? Anyway, I have no answer, but I'm just going to fling that out into the ether to see what you do with it. Sorry.
Go ahead, Melanie or Satya.
You are reading
I saw you responding. Wheels turning.
And, a few elements of reflection. I will start by Audrey and the importance of the certification. Yes, particularly for when you bring in, and even, it's out of school use and in school use. In many education systems we have been working in, you don't really, except a few, you don't really have a strong entrepreneurship training, or even work experience, work-based learning, work immersion programming. So I think it's for both. When you start introducing entrepreneurship, and I think in some ways I'm trying to also answer Helen. Some of the competences we have seen that are important for those youth are not only around, the typical entrepreneurship skills and competencies around the business plans, the innovation, the idea, etc. But it's about some of those transversal skills, those soft skills around confidence in oneself, understanding what is that I can fail and I can start again, and decision making, understanding how to work in teams, those communication elements, setting up ourselves, our own goals, not reaching too high, but really figuring out while still having the big goal, how I can get there. Ability to diversify income generating activities have been some of the elements that are the soft element that traditionally is not always taught by a quick entrepreneurship training that will lead to funding. And many of those youth don't have those foundationals, either through the education systems they go through. That de-risks the investment into the entrepreneur because they know that they can fail but start again, or they can diversify. That's why we reach those 70, when we track, that's why we are at that 70% kind of threshold around 2 years still in success. It's not always the same exact business, but they have been evolved to adapt and evolve. And how you can capture that in those programs, I think, is very important to ensure the greatest chance of success for the startups. But those skills are not part of a degree or a diploma, while still the youth need to be more and more interested to take those kind of training and approaches, the certification. But the certification will not be recognized often by the family. I go back to the community or even the private sector if it's not part of a degree. So what do we do? And that's where actually the champions, I think Satya talked a little bit about that, but the champions model is important. It's really ensuring the buying by the private sector of those competence and skills so that the certificating question start by word of mouth through different industry clusters, really be valued because of the demonstrated skills of either the youth workforce they have absorbed or the successful business of the supply chain industry, and how you use that ecosystem of private champions to really give the value behind the certification in question.
And also,
And that's how we,
Yeah.
I mean, in Rwanda, it was obvious for us. I mean, we had, it's called Akazi Kanoze. The private sector knew the Akazi Kanoze brands and asked for each youth who were applying for a job to have the Akazi Kanoze certificates. And it was not a formal education one, but it had become something of value to be able for the private sector in terms of recognizing the competency of the youth in terms of thrive, time management, and other elements that they were looking for on those soft skills.
I was also just going to reference back to the presentation again, too, that kind of system level building. So engaging all of the national agencies and their decentralized kind of representatives. But back to the YDAs that my colleagues talked about, and really how we build the foundation at local level in the mayor's offices, in the communities, to kind of ensure that that social and economic safety net is in place, and there are people that are kind of watching the whole process and not just brought in kind of halfway through or at the end. And that's a lot of the kind of commentary that's out there, as well as on a lot of development programs. Private sector is brought in well after the fact and asked for something, whereas the way that we approach entering a new country or in countries that we've been in for a long time is this constant relationship building at the outset, at the beginning of something, as part of design, all along the way, so that we're those relationships are just truer to what is needed on the ground, and ensuring that we're responding to that and we're bringing everyone along at the outset.
Emmy, I'd like to also add my reflection. I think it's intriguing that what we are seeing in Southeast Asia is very similar to what Audrey or Aline described, not all micro SME would be successful. And we also found similar thing that, that small seed fund at the beginning is really critical. So we have been working towards smaller seed fund, but, give it to more youth or more youth groups, so that it's not like a small number of winning team, but there are more winning team to get the small seed fund to start their business. We also found that, when the business failed or business idea was not successful, and then they get up and try to do it again several times. And even some of them give up and start applying for, salary job. That entrepreneurial skills or entrepreneurial mindset and resilience, and all the experience of try to start a business and learn from it, actually stay with them and become their strength when they go into a different pathway. Another reflection that I'd like to share, we have similar, pitching, training and pitching and innovation challenge in the south of Vietnam, around the Mekong Delta, where is heavily affected by climate issue. And there we worked with youth from lower income background. And, the project was selected exclusively for youth from lower income background. But what surprised us was that, the youth from that are not eligible to enter also wanted to participate as well once they see, what their peer got into. And they also realized that, although they are not enrollment student or not from a discipline that's directly involved with green skills, they see, like, one of the youth actually reflected that I didn't realize that finance is so crucial for sustainability and green jobs, for example. So I'm sharing this because it's intriguing to see a lot of parallel of what we are doing in Southeast Asia and India and even Switzerland. So I think we are facing the same issues, and we are working towards the solution. And the solution may be different in different places, but it's really exciting to get to share and learn from everyone.
Just a very quick add to just on the seed funding and sort of prize money as being sort of something that the few receive is one of the most powerful types of prizes we found in the Philippines was actually, we worked with SM, which is a huge supermarket chain and mall chain, sorry. And what they did was provide for free kiosks for youth who were winning the competition to sell their goods. So it wasn't seed funding, but what it did was give them profile and sort of the buy-in, the formal nod from this giant company that they thought that these goods were worth selling. And that really launched a lot of the businesses.
Awesome.
Really.
Thank you, Satya and Tanya. I see Kim has a question.
Hi, everybody. I hope my internet is going to be stable enough. It seems to be a bit dodgy. I am calling in from South Africa. I work for a small NPO called Fruit Wars Foundation. And we work down in the Western Cape, so right at the tip of South Africa. We work in a small town with a lot of rural area. And I guess there's a couple of things that have got me thinking throughout this discussion. And one is just how you define green jobs. So please forgive me in advance. I actually come from a conservation background. I'm interested from this in, we're looking from a conservation perspective about how do you build a resilient future, and that also includes the youth, obviously, into that. And so we Yeah, so one is, how do you define green jobs? I think the Philippines, I see it's very climate focused. We are also attached to a ecotourism operation. And so we have, yeah, a lot of ecotourism jobs. Number two, just how do you match? We obviously have our limitations on, you know, our focus as an NPO is strongly conservation focused. And how do you match, I guess, the needs of, say, a business or an NPO along with the needs of like local municipality, as well as the desires of the youth, right? There's obviously this desire to get more tech savvy, to move into town, into positions where you're sitting at a desk and you're doing a job that requires sitting at a desk and on a computer. But these don't necessarily align with the conservation goals. And some of the conservation work is just like really like manual work, very sort of in the field work, which is not really viewed as, I guess, sexy or interesting, but will have to happen and needs to continue to happen. And unfortunately, there's no tech solution that can solve for that. And so how do you like match all of those, but also knowing that you want to build youth that are, even though they come from a more rural area, and obviously in rural areas, things are slower to catch up, but you understand where the global population is going with regards to jobs and all the rest, and you don't want them to lose out that opportunity, but also realizing that I guess it's a timing difference of how do you also then, you want them to immediately have an opportunity, but that immediate opportunity might not be aligned with a very future looking opportunity, I guess. That makes sense.
Thank you, Kim. No, that's really interesting. I was just thinking as you were talking, a lot of folks that work behind desks are now running back to how do we engage more with nature. But maybe so your first question, how is the EDC defining green jobs? And then how to kind of match the disparate needs and interests going on. Melanie, do you want to start us off?
Yeah. So we are going, I mean, on the broad spectrum. So we have that global initiative, our water work that Amy presented very quickly, 1 million young people into green jobs. For that definition of green jobs, we are in that global assessment and our monitoring and evaluation systems. We have adopted the ILO definitions around green jobs that capture both mitigation and adaptation, but more from the greenhouse gas emission reductions and a few other elements under that definition. But however, the important, and I think this is where you are at, it's really locally what it means. So we have also taken the decision, we have had a lot of conversations, and year after year as well, but not trying to go into a certification of green jobs ourselves. EDC is not a conservation organization, and we are not expert for that. But we make sure that we work in each of the countries we operate in with conservation partners. Really understand the dynamics, what could look like green jobs per se, because of the, sorry, I think I'm losing, can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I losing you? Yeah?
No,
I was noticed that I was losing my internet. Okay. So working with conservation partners, country per country, we really also get a better sense about those dynamics actually, and figuring out actually even at subnational level, what are some of the more attractive jobs for the youth, but also what are the counter effects on the communities. And I don't know, it was a sideway to go back to Satya and what we have learned and how we have approached coastal preservation in some of the countries we have been operating in, to try to Kim, get back to what you were talking about on the ecotourism as well, and those kind of economic sectors, but that can be also attractive to youth and how to make it attractive. So I hope, yeah, Satia, go ahead.
Thank you, Melanie. So I'd like to share a few stories from our work. We often work in places where maybe similar to your the environment that you are working in, Kim. The youth told me that in their town, everybody who could leave, they have already left, right? So the ones there are the one that, well, in their words, got stuck and could not go and get a better job elsewhere. So that's the kind of environment that we worked with in some of our projects. What we did, we did not actually match the youth with the skills, but we introduced kind of different or deeper learning experience. I have two examples. One example is on ecotourism on around mangrove forests in Papua, Indonesia. So we make the ecotourism deeper by bringing in experts to help them learn about ecosystem and also the skills about storytelling, so that they can tell the story to the tourists how the mangrove forest actually is the core of their culture, and understand better about the ecosystem within, so that when they design the ecotourism program, it's deeper and more meaningful. Another community that we worked with is ethnic minority in the Philippines, where we get the youth to, we introduce technology, not matching them to technology, but just introduce the technology to them. In the reforestation effort, they grow seedlings and then use geotagging to identify the location of the tree that the seedlings that they plant, and then get people to adopt the tree, so that they can go and visit the tree that they adopt from Google Map. And once the youth in those rural areas learn the technology, we cannot stop them. Now then, after that, they went on and tried to map geohazard. That Philippines sometimes have earthquake and flood. So they start mapping the geohazard, the area that's affected by the earthquake, where the vulnerable people, the elderly, so that when something happens, the community can then address, who are really in need. Also, they also map areas that got flooded. So this is, an example of how when the youth are introduced to technology, you cannot stop them. They just keep on exploring with technology. We also get them to collect their ethnic, their indigenous languages. They collect song, recipe, lullaby, interviewed elders in their community, and keep that as part of, when we introduce the idea of data sovereignty to them, they realize that, data is the new oil, right? And they are now collecting and protecting and curating the precious data about their community. And then, in that process, they learn how to use technology tool and start to use AI and other tools, other technology to multimedia skills. In all that process, it's create meaning to all the digital literacy and AI fluency exercise for them to do. So those are a few examples, that of the work that we do. Maybe, one day they would leave. It's up to them, but it's the experience that, we introduce or help bridge the inequity gap, so that they can have a sample of, learning the new technology, that if we do not introduce that to them, they may not have the opportunity. So I think it's about creating opportunity and finding meaningful experience for the youth to actually implement with technology.
That's brilliant. If I could ask a question, you describe a depth of relationships in country. You've been in these countries for multiple years. Um, uh, it's remarkable in how a de-risk project calibrates your approach. It does wonderful things for the success and impacts we're trying to achieve. So, where is EDC today? Are you looking to scale in particular countries? Are you looking to expand to other geographies? Where you're looking to expand? How long does that take to calibrate your model and to start to implement it?
And if I can add one thing to that question, what would be the ask from an EDC perspective over the next 3 to 5 years? In addition to what Kayvon just asked, what would be, from a financing and funding perspective, an ideal scenario?
Thank you, Audrey. I'm going to pass that to Melanie.
We I think for us it's identifying new partners. Through that work we have been doing both from an product innovation approach perspective, diversification of use segmentation. There have been some new innovations that have come up that are more adapted to university students, for instance, and really help streamline that approach. Talent pipeline of economy and use of the digital evolutions to be able to reach greater triple bottom line in their career and enterprises, being it social, economic, and green and planet, and how through those kind of new technological approaches and networks of universities worldwide, we could expand more quickly and in quality, and who are the right partners to work with us on that. Our traditional funding has been country per country. I think through those impact investor networks approaches, we are looking at new partners to also be able to cross boundaries and really scale up and fast those kind of innovation that have come up from that deeply rooted partnership work and can take place within those deeply rooted partnerships around the world. It's one. The second is as we look at these growing green economic sectors, they are rising economic sectors per se. I mean, being it climate smart agriculture, green construction, renewable energy, and really going deeper into those markets to accelerate that green workforce and how to go about it. We need private sector partners, mindset business supporters that can really help hand in hand with us on those scale issues and see how we can accelerate within those economic sector. So if some of the network here are working on those economic sector and are interested to see how to scale rapidly that green workforce needed for those economic sector, I think that's the type of new partnerships we are looking for that will really make us continue grow and achieve some of the visions and goals that we have set up for ourselves in the coming years, but with new models of financing and partnership that can be relevant for those trends and those rapid change that we are observing. Finally, on the country question, I mean, we don't only work where we are. I mean, we have been working across 80 different countries in the past 20 years. More recently, we were more in depth in 20 countries. If at a country level, so we have been also working with some more international agencies about country level programming and what it means in new country in setting up, national action plans for green workforce and business environment. If some partners are interested to understand what it would like for my country, how can we design that? I mean, those are elements we are happy also to contribute to the network.
So hopefully that answers your question as well, Kayvon.
And I mean, Audrey asked for the financing models. I think Amy talked a little bit about that, but some of those product and innovation growth and rapid growth, we are working with different private partners in the area of $500,000 to $1 million in terms of rapid scale up in an absorption by different multi-level partners worldwide or in specific regions. Country-based solutions that scale, at the type of level that we just described with the Philippines is more around $15 million investments, where we are really into hand in hand with private partners, implementing within those national systems, those kind of at-scale solutions as partnership we have currently with MasterCard Foundation, for instance, in Senegal and Liberia.
Brilliant. I want to thank everyone. I don't know if we have another question. Give it a second. And seeing none, we're towards the end of the session. I just want to wrap up by, of course, thanking our speakers and attendees and the individuals asking the questions. Really robust conversation. Do appreciate it. This is, I don't know, we're at 650 plus events over these last 18 or so years. It just keeps growing, and this is exactly why. I want to again let you know that for our virtual events, we do record the sessions and we will be posting them on our YouTube channel, and I will circulate it back to the attendees. And again, many of these events, or most of them, are actually in person. So please continue to check in on our website. We're constantly updating new events, and we look forward to your participation. I think, Audrey.
I'll just add that if there was somebody that couldn't make it to the session today, who you think could be interested, we encourage you to share the link. We'll share the link as well. And I do think it would be useful to articulate that ask that Melanie so kind of just really nicely put together just now in terms of partnerships, new innovative financing structures, approaches that could be tested, especially by mission investors and large venture philanthropies, impact investors working on livelihoods in specific countries. I think it'd be useful to articulate that ask and make that part of the follow-up and the kind of thank you and what gets circulated as post-event information. So ideally, this conversation continues. This was just a first, part one, and we'll be able to continue this and continue to enlarge the circle. And I'm just grateful to have been here, learned a lot, and thank you so much. It's really brilliant.
And on behalf of all of my colleagues, excuse me, on behalf of all my colleagues here, thank you so much, Kayvon and Audrey, for hosting EDC, and it was a real pleasure to hear your questions and to engage today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.